Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at 1in100. Go to 1in100.co for your chance to win killer Patriots, Celtics, Bruins, or even concert tickets throughout New England for the price of beer or a large pizza. Go to 1in100.co for your chance to win today. Welcome back to the Banners broadcast. I'm your host, Chris Grenham, and with me, as always, post-Thanksgiving, we finally get to talk about a win in New Orleans. Nick Gelso. Nick, what's going on, man?
Yeah, man, finally something different to talk about a little bit. Something good.
Something good. We've got some positivity coming out of a little negativity, actually, because we had Jaylen Brown go down on Saturday at Dallas. He fell really hard on his tailbone. Had a lower back injury, so he missed Monday night's game against the New Orleans Pelicans, and in came Marcus Smart. There's been a ton of starting lineup debate for, I feel like, the last couple weeks. We've had people wanting Gordon Hayward out, and the last few games he has been out, and he's been pretty solid off of the bench. I think he's making his slow improvements, as everyone has assumed, but we got some Marcus Smart last night, and also Marcus Morris in the starting lineup. What'd you think about that last night?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just welcome. It's the second game in a row where Morris is starting. I think he started for Al in Dallas.
Maybe, I forget.
Yeah, regardless. And then Marcus Smart. I just find it hilarious how Celtics fans, and we're all a part of it on Twitter, but 2 weeks ago it was Marcus Smart can't shoot, trade him. Now he's the whole root of the difference here from what we saw on Monday night versus the last couple. That's
like the ultimate debate with Marcus Smart. You see him go out there and he goes to pull up from three, and everyone goes no, and then every now and then he'll knock it down, and you're like, yeah, it's fine, that's fine. But
dude, he reminds me of Dennis Johnson. He could go 1 for 13 from the field and take the game-winning shot. That's Marcus.
Exactly, same kind of thing. I mean, last night, of course, he's not expected to provide that big punch on the offensive end. He played 40 minutes last night, which is rare for a Brad Stevens player. He's it's the most minutes this season in a non-OT game. He had 8 points, 5 assists, and 2 boards. But it was his defense, of course, which it always is, and his intensity on the defensive end that kind of helped create some offense. I mean, is that the punch that the Celtics really needed? Is this the all-seeing fixture? Like, are the Celtics back to normal now that they've solved this problem?
Chris, I'll tell you what. I don't know. The lineup change may be what sparks them finding themselves. But ultimately, what I saw Monday night was a change in mindset, in focus, in approach. And that might be the aggressiveness of the starters playing with Marcus Smart, who was he was all out from the opening tip.
Yep.
But I'm encouraged, Chris. I'm afraid to say it. It's like all season we've been up and down on a roller coaster. But I'm encouraged because from buzzer to buzzer, they just had that look in their eye, and Marcus is right. In his post-game sound, I think he said something like, "This is the team we've been," and they are. That is the team that Celtics fans expected. And don't anybody poo-poo the Pelicans either. That's a good team.
Yeah.
With Anthony Davis.
Yeah, they looked a lot like the Celtics last night in terms of struggles and how they kind of deal with their struggles. It reminded me a lot of what we've seen earlier in the year. But yeah, you're right. Like Al Horford after the game said that's the team that we looked like last year. Yeah, that's kind of, which was encouraging is what he said. But thought it was interesting, Kyrie's comments after the game. He was talking a lot about Smart and what bringing him into the lineup does. And he started off by saying, of course, they came out off the tip with a defensive mindset, kind of focusing on that defensive presence, which is going to happen with any lineup that has Marcus Smart because he just forces it on people. Yeah. But, I mean, they forced 22 turnovers last night. They had 32 points off of turnovers.
And that's the telling thing because that's where the turnovers is the intensity, right?
Right.
So they were not unforced turnovers. The Celtics were like, what did they used to call, I think Rozier and Smart, what did they use, Bulldogs or something?
Bulldogs, something like that. I mean, that's fitting. That's definitely fitting.
But it was everybody on the team, it was contagious. So, but then after forcing the turnovers, they were completing the play, and that's so the defensive intensity was there, the focus to complete the play. First time we've really seen it all season. The Toronto game aside, and some little peaks, and I think every quarter I was there I was tweeting out, okay, the real test is now, how are they going to come out to the second quarter? Because complacency, in my opinion, has been their biggest complacency and hanging their head.
Totally. You've been saying that since the preseason, and it's been pretty evident from the get-go. But you're right. At the end of the third quarter, the Pelicans went on a quick, I think it was like an 8-0 run.
Yeah.
And they cut the lead to 10. And everyone on Twitter, including yourself, including myself, how are they going to respond? Here we go again.
Yep.
But it was that end-to-end energy. In my opinion, it was by far the most complete game they've played all season. But it's that energy from Smart that's contagious. It's just so contagious, and it creates on both sides of the ball. And you saw it throughout the game from everyone involved. You saw the Celtics' pace was much quicker than it has been in the last couple games. And sometimes the Celtics start off with a quick pace, and guys are hot coming off the tip, and then by the middle of the second quarter, once the subs are coming in and there's a mixture of the second unit and the first unit, it's just an absolute mess, and the pace is down. So that energy kept up for the entire game. I thought it was pretty interesting too, real quick. Smart on the offensive end had such a different impact than I thought he would, because they used him as the primary point guard for a lot of last night, at least in the early
going there. So go ahead. That's where I was going to say.
And I know I've talked about it. I've kind of beaten it to death in the first month of the season here, but I'm a huge fan of Kyrie Irving working off the ball. And I'm a huge fan of Terry Rozier working off the ball and putting Smart into the starting lineup. Of course, Gordon Hayward was playing with the second unit before Smart came into the starting lineup, but having Gordon Hayward be the primary ball handler on the second unit allows Terry Rozier to work off the ball. And the same thing goes for Marcus Smart in the starting lineup with Kyrie Irving. And I think that opens up like a world of flexibility for Brad Stevens.
That's where I was going, Chris. I mean, you read my mind, because it's almost as if, and we're talking about, okay, how encouraging is the win? And I don't think the answer is going to be told until they play the Cavs on Friday, which is, a trap game.
Yep.
It means way more to the Cavs than it does to the Celtics. So, but
Cavs have been hot too. They've got a couple nice wins as of late, last week or so.
Yeah. Well, looking at the Monday's game, the intensity, or okay, so figuring everything out, that's where I want to go with this.
Yeah.
We had talked earlier in the season about the quagmire. I compared it to the old Big Three. Like, Chris Ford couldn't play Bird, Parrish, and McHale together. Well, Brad was having a hard time playing Rozier and Irving together, because they both played, like you're saying, I think a lot better, or better in this system off the ball.
Right. And
being able to shift the lineups around has allowed Stevens to kind of start to figure it out. I think you said it right when you said, Smart's allowing Kyrie to play off the ball, and Hayward's allowing Irving or Terry to play off the ball. Now, what does this really do long term? Well, really, if Celtics fans think Marcus Smart should be starting, Gordon Hayward should be on the bench, they're crazy. I mean, eventually it's going to go back to normal. But what I think that we saw Monday night was Hayward should, when he's inserted back into the starting lineup, be able to allow Irving to play off the ball quite a bit more, which we weren't seeing in the first half of the season. And on the other side, the flip side of that is Smart should be allowing Rozier to play off the ball a lot more. So that little quagmire that Stevens was going through, I think, is solved. But Celtics fans need to tone it down, because there is no way going into the second half of the season that
Marcus Smart's going to be a starting point guard. Come on, man. You got to roll. I mean, Celtics Twitter and Celtics fans are in a pretty vulnerable place right now.
They always are, dude. I don't want to pick on the fans. They're either
it's a diehard fan base. Yeah,
they're either winning the championship or jumping off a cliff.
Yeah, and I can understand the cliff jumping that was occurring over the last 2 weeks.
Me too.
But you're right. I mean, part of the benefit of bringing Gordon Hayward in last offseason was that he could act as a primary ball handler alongside Kyrie, and that just opens up so many portals, especially for a coach like Brad Stevens, who loves toying with lineups. And he's going to continue to toy with these lineups over the next few weeks, and probably past the new year, honestly, probably into January, because it's going to take Gordon Hayward plenty of time. And Stevens, pretty funny last night after the game, said they won't be settled on a starting lineup until forever. So,
but it's nice to see Stevens figuring it out to a point where he can now tinker with the lineups, because early on in the season, everybody was going, what the heck is going on with Brad?
Yeah.
He should be changing up the lineup. And now he's starting to figure out the combinations that work best for this team.
Right.
And, I want to step back just a little bit, Chris, because I was home in Pennsylvania for the holiday.
Yep.
You I think you were the only one representing our company in Celtics Squad as well.
Yeah.
During the New York Knicks disaster.
Yeah.
And I have seen games where the old, the Pierce, Garnett, Allen have gotten booed off the court. It was extremely rare, but it did happen. From what I heard, there were a lot of boo birds.
There were plenty of boo birds, and
tell
rightfully
me
so.
About that game.
Rightfully so. I mean, it was bizarre, because coming off of getting torched by Kemba Walker, you expected them to show up and be fine. They're back on their home court and kind of bounce back, but instead they let Trey Burke just absolutely dominate them. The crowd initially was kind of shocked off the bat, because the Knicks came out and punched pretty hard. I think they were up 10 or something after the first quarter, and then they put up a 40-point second quarter. So at first it was kind of, the crowd was stunned, and then it turned into boos. And as it continued into the third, it was like, what the hell's going on? Like, this is pretty bad. And it was the classic tendency that we had seen from the last 2 weeks, where the fourth quarter comes around and the Celtics go into this desperation mode, and they are able to crawl back into it. Right. But there's no need for this Celtics team to be playing in desperation in a fourth quarter against Trey Burke and the New York Knicks. That shouldn't happen. Trey Burke put up 29 points. It was so bad. It was so bad.
You could kind of accept it on a team that has won 12 or 13 straight, and then a Knicks team comes in and kind of takes them sideways. But, dude, like we were saying last week or the week before, this is the recipe. This is what the Celtics needed.
Right.
They need this homestand.
Yeah. They need the Hawks, the Mavericks, the Knicks.
Hawks, right. Yeah. And here, I mean, I immediately thought of you. I happened to be out for a holiday party that night, so I was in Pennsylvania. So I had no access to the game, but I was watching it watching the scores on my phone. And I'm like, Grenham and I just said they need to win these games. Yeah. And man, they stunk it up.
And you know what? I found myself saying that on yesterday morning. So we're recording this on Tuesday, obviously. Right. I found myself saying that on Monday morning. Like, it's okay. Sure. After this Pelicans game will be tough, but then they get Cleveland, and they've got a couple easy games here. And I had to pause and say, hey, I said that about the last stretch too. And they lost to the Jazz, they lost to the Hornets, they lost to the Knicks, they lost to the Mavericks. So it is these tough stretches where they shouldn't be tough. It's these easy games, and they're still managing to let Trey Burke score 29 points. It was, and that got really dark post game. You had Brad Stevens saying, I'm just not sure how good we are.
Yeah, I mean, that was one post game where I was kind of wishing I was there, to be honest with you, because
it was fascinating.
Even Kyrie's comments, which I thought were, Jeff Clark may not like this, but I loved his Thanksgiving comment. I thought it was typical Kyrie and hilarious. And I also loved the apology because it was totally out of line.
That was, okay, let's talk about that real quick, and then we'll get back to the slide, because I was right there when it happened, and Clevis Murray and I talked about it on one of the segments for CLNS after the game. But as all things do on Twitter, it was kind of blown out of proportion. I mean, after each media scrum, Abby Chin politely was saying, Happy Thanksgiving, because it was Wednesday night. We're heading to Thanksgiving the next day. And so Kyrie finished the availability. If only I had kept my phone rolling.
Yeah, I was going, why?
I turned it off because, I wanted it to be cut cleanly for the YouTube upload. And so the media scrum ends. Everyone puts their phones down. He starts to walk away. We kind of pave the way for him to walk back into the locker room. And Abby Chin says, Happy Thanksgiving. And are we allowed to swear on this? Can I swear on this?
No, you cannot swear on
this. He says, that's good to know. He says, bleep Thanksgiving. And everyone just kind of froze. And then, of course, the tweets started coming and people started exploding basically saying, "Oh, look at this. The Celtics locker room is imploding right now." Kyrie is even saying, to put it politely, "Screw Thanksgiving," and it really wasn't. He apologized after. In the last 6 months, he's been very high about his Native American heritage, and that's just been his mantra, and that's fine. He apologized right after. He jumped at it. He even apologized on Twitter the next day. So it was blown out of proportion. Like,
who do you think made him apologize? The Celtics or Nike?
That's a good question. I don't really know.
He was forced to apologize, Chris. Kyrie.
100%.
Well
100%. But it was interesting because he apologized for what he said. He didn't apologize for downgrading Thanksgiving as a holiday.
Well, let me tell you, last year, and I don't remember exactly how it happened.
Yeah.
But we were in a similar media scrum, and it was the game before Christmas. And Joe Sway and I did a segment, "Who you invite into your holiday party?"
Yeah.
And Joe Sway was in the press scrum, and I asked Kyrie something. Kyrie caught his eye and said, "You know what I think about Christmas." Like, it implied that he had watched the segment, right? Yeah. Which I could see Kyrie doing, and not saying that he watches our videos, but I could see, he's pretty much a media hawk.
Let's go with that though. Kyrie's a very loyal CLNS video
and Celtics blog.
And
Celtics
that. Blog, yes.
Yeah, but he is a media bit of a, he's crazy about the media.
Totally.
But he took Joe Sway and stomped him down to about an inch, and it was in a similar vein. I don't think he said F it, but he said something like, "You know my feelings on Christmas. You wouldn't even invite me to your Christmas party if you had one." Something on those lines.
It's just like an awkward. It creates such an awkward dynamic.
So awkward. And Joe Sway, he's the nicest guy.
Oh yeah, he's a man.
But he, of course, I'll tell you another really quick, funny story on a bad night. So it's opening night last year against Cleveland. Obviously, what happens with Hayward happens. We're in the locker room, and Joe Sway takes the visitors' locker room. I take the home locker room. Now, having seen what happened with Gordon, you could understand that everybody was like a deer in headlights.
Yeah.
And there was 1 million people in the Celtics locker room, similar to the way it was opening night this year. But anyway, I'm holding my cell phone to get Kyrie, because we had the big camera in the LeBron locker room.
Right.
And I got really good up close to him, and I don't know if it was Bob Schramm or somebody nudged me, and my hands, I have arthritis, my hands snapped. The phone literally hit Kyrie almost in the face, hit him right off his chest. His first game as a Celtic, lands on the ground. He looks up, looks at me, looks at the phone, bends down, picks it up, and hands it back to me. I'm like, I'm getting thrown out of here. The guy
you get tossed from Quicken Loans Arena. Poor guy's played one game. He just watched his teammate go down with a broken ankle.
I can do Kyrie stories all day. I love the dude.
Oh man. Well, either way, back to we digress a little bit, but that's what we like to digress on.
That's what I do.
It was a dark place. He was almost a little after the Knicks game. It was I don't want to say he was backhanded in some of his comments, but you could tell there was kind of a passive-aggressive like mantra talking about the dynamic and how they expect more from the younger guys who were so good last year and they weren't really stepping up, and it was an effort issue. And, of course, at some point someone's going to have to step up, not necessarily in the media, but someone's going to have to say something. And I'm sure Marcus Smart has done it multiple times because he seems to act as the heart of this team. And it kind of showed last night in New Orleans because he brought that intensity. But Kyrie, after last night's game, was really speaking highly of Marcus Smart, saying that it gave him an outlet to work off the ball. It took a lot of pressure off of him offensively and defensively. They started off quick. I'm paraphrasing here, but they started off quick, never looked back. And when asked about his impact on the lineup as a whole, he said there's a reason we signed him back. There's a reason why he's instrumental for our team to be successful, because he's a veteran now. He's played high-level basketball for the Celtics for a few years. So I thought it was interesting because Kyrie, of course, is supportive of his teammates, but he really went in on Marcus Smart last night post-game and spoke pretty highly.
As he should, because I don't know what's going on in the Celtics locker room behind closed doors.
Yeah.
But in front of the media, Marcus Smart has been really the only vocal leader of this team, and he's let Kyrie off the hook because Kyrie does a lot of finger pointing. We need this, and I'm a huge Kyrie fan.
Yeah.
But we need this. We need a veteran, a 14-year veteran. Next game, the young.
God, what terrible timing that was with the Carmelo Anthony.
Oh, it's just terrible. And the next game, it's the youngsters aren't playing well enough.
Right.
Well, I don't know, and I think it's a valid question because I don't think they know who the leader of the team is.
Yeah, I think Marcus Smart is definitely the emotional leader. But
no one's going to really take Smart seriously to the point where he's going to be able to KG call out Kyrie.
Well, I think if anyone's going to in the locker room, it would be him. I don't necessarily see this locker room dynamic as one where people are going to start getting called out. Maybe say these struggles continue 2 months from now. Maybe it does go to that. But I think Marcus Smart's the guy who would do that compared to the rest of the roster.
I think he would too, but how much weight does that carry with his teammates? Maybe the young guys a little bit of weight, but
right. But I get what you're saying with a guy like Kyrie.
You know what I'm saying?
I
think Kyrie needs to really step up and be that guy. And if you think about it, he's never been. He was alone on a terrible Cavs team, and LeBron comes back, and even though LeBron always needs kind of like a co-captain with him, Kyrie played that well. Gordon doesn't have the attitude for it. Al leads by example, and so there's no real vocal
big
leader.
Vocal, yeah. Gordon's kind of quiet on the quiet side too. You're right. So that's kind of an interesting thing to follow, especially if the struggles continue over the next couple months. But one more thing on Marcus Smart, we could basically just rename this podcast like the Marcus Smart Pod or something like that. I mean, I would be totally cool with that. But
me too.
In that stretch where the Celtics played, Charlotte, New York, Atlanta, Dallas, whatever, they struggled a lot with perimeter defense, specifically guard play off of the pick and roll schemes, and that happened. Of course, Kemba Walker torched the Celtics on the 19th. Which isn't surprising because he torches everyone. But then it led to Trey Burke, and they were okay with Trae Young in Atlanta, but Atlanta's just a horrendous defensive team, so they were never really in that game. Then it was J.J. Barea in Dallas. And
Barea has been torching the Celtics for, it seems like 20 years.
He loves it. I don't know if it's the Northeastern connection or what, but he just absolutely loves it. But Marcus Smart was really good last night with Drew Holiday and Etuan Moore.
Yeah.
He defended Moore for 14 possessions, only allowed 3 points. He marked up Holiday for 38 possessions and allowed just 7 points.
Yeah, and he really was great with Holiday.
He really was, and he contested 12 threes, which was a team high. And I think leaving him in the starting lineup just for the short term, for the time being, like until Gordon, gets back to his normal self, I think that's really going to help stifle this defense because they have, as Brad Stevens said, a myriad of issues defending the pick and roll up high. So, I don't know. Do you think they leave him in going forward? Of course, he said there's not going to be a starting lineup until forever. But do you think we'll see Marcus Smart starting, say, Friday against Cleveland and then in Minnesota?
Hope so, because I think he needs to be, for nothing less, he needs to be rewarded. And
I agree.
And, the other thing to note was I tend to, from home in particular, not live at the games, but from home, I tend to watch Kyrie defend off the ball. And usually he is just horrendous.
Yeah, he can be pretty tough.
Really tough to watch. But Monday night, he was really good off the ball because that energy is so contagious.
Yeah.
So,
and he said it himself. He felt some pressure fall off his shoulders with Smart alongside him. Yeah.
So can that be the starting? No, because I think long term, Smart really gets exposed shooting wise.
Sure.
I think we both know that.
Yeah, you'd rather have Gordon Hayward's healthy shot there, even though it hasn't been great. But
it hasn't been great.
Yeah.
I think you'll see him start against the Cavs, though. I think they have great momentum. So why would Stevens change it? Does the 4-day rest concern you? It's
Maybe.
Just typical that coming off the best game of the season, now they have a 4-day rest.
What a bizarre schedule. So they played back-to-back in Atlanta and Dallas. Then they play Monday in New Orleans. They get basically the week off until Friday, and then they go the next night to Minnesota. And then they don't play until the following Thursday. It's like a really weird schedule, really bizarre.
And it's been a bizarre schedule the whole first half of the season.
It really has, yeah. But I don't know how the layoff will impact them. Of course, they've been traveling a lot over the last 10 days, so Brad they had a day off today. They're expected to have a day off on Wednesday, and then a full,
back at it
like
Thursday.
A mid-season is the way Stevens described it, practice on Thursday before playing at the Garden on Friday night. So, like you said, they've got momentum. I don't expect Stevens to pull Smart from the lineup. Colin Sexton's been playing rather well in the last week, so he can help with that perimeter defense. The last thing you need is for them to get torched by another young guard.
No, and the Cavs always play the Celtics hard.
They always do, yeah. I mean, you heard it from Tristan Thompson's mouth.
Yep.
They rule the East, man. They will until June.
Hey, you know what? He's right, Chris.
He's
right. They're the Eastern Conference champions until they lose.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean the Cavs play them
They do.
tough always, and the Celtics need to come out with that aggressiveness they did on Monday night, and they need to continue it straight through.
They do. It really helped their. I'm trying to think of what their offensive rating was. I'm trying to look it up right now. Their defensive rating currently sits at second in the league at 103,
which is shocking. You don't realize it.
And there was a lot. There was a lot of numbers coming out the last couple of days about how, broken down by quarter, they'd be really good in the first and second quarter, and they'd be absolute trash in the fourth quarter. And basically, over the last week or so, how it's decreased. But their offensive rating still sits at 26th in the league at 105.5. So, of course, they have plenty to go there.
A lot of work to do there.
Yeah. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at The Athletic, featuring in-depth Celtics coverage written by journalists like our friends Jared Weiss, Clevis Murray, and Jay King. The Athletic has you covered on all fronts: Patriots, Bruins, Celtics, Red Sox. Whatever you need, they have you covered. Subscribe today and receive 40% off. Go to theathletic.com/thegarden to support the show and sign up for The Athletic for less than $3 a month. It is a no-brainer for Celtics fans, Boston fans, and sports fans everywhere. A lot of people aren't really talking about, because Marcus Smart was so good last night, was Marcus Morris getting the start. He got 30 minutes last night, was 8 for 14, just continuing to be efficient.
Morris. Yep.
Just Marcus Morris. He had 19 points. He was +9. He had 11 rebounds. You think he gets another start? Do you think we could see Aaron Baines maybe find not a decreased role, but less spot starts?
The issue is, Al tends to struggle with Thompson.
Yeah.
On the boards.
Right.
Tristan Thompson has been killing the Celtics on the boards he's another guy for 15 years.
Specifically in the offensive glass.
Yeah. So I don't know that more, and I don't, as much as I like the way they're playing with Morris, especially Monday night starting, I really, really like him coming off the bench.
Yeah.
He really adds a spark because he's the only reliable guy right now on BWA.
Which is just,
I keep throwing that
which is just insane to me that if you were to tell me in the preseason or in the offseason that
I think I did.
Marcus Smart, sure you did. That Marcus Smart was Marcus Morris was going to be one of the most efficient and consistent players on this team, I would have told you were absolutely crazy. Like, that was not his mantra at all prior to this, but he has been. And again, he's 8 for 14 in New Orleans. He was great. He's just reliable, and he's actually been pretty solid on the defensive side of the ball too. Yeah. So I could see him getting some pretty solid minutes going forward here.
Let's not forget too. Now, I don't know where does that leave Jalen if he were to come back.
Well, that's the thing. I'm not really sure.
I bring Jalen. I have no qualms putting Jalen on the bench.
I said it. Yeah, I said it post game during one of our segments. I think like 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the starting lineup situation, and my vote was to bring him and Hayward off the bench. And again, this isn't for the long term. This isn't a fix for the entirety of the season, just for the short term, because there's some issues here, and Brad Stevens needs to toy with the lineups. And I don't know about Jalen, but with a guy like Gordon Hayward, he doesn't see getting moved to the bench as a decreased role or as a demotion or something like that. He understands that they're tweaking with a lot of things going forward, and he needs to come back.
He also understands he's not playing very well.
He gets that, and he's continuously set his 3-point game, continues to struggle and stuff. But I'm very curious to see what happens with Jaylen Brown's minutes going forward here, because he's not been great over the last couple of weeks.
He's not been great, I don't think, he's had moments.
Yeah.
But he's not been great since the start of the season. And there, he frustrates me to begin with, but the dribbling in traffic still hasn't been corrected. And also I think we've been working together now almost 2 years, Chris, covering games. I think you're realizing I'm not an X and O guy. I'm a humanity guy. I'm a body language guy.
Yeah.
Right. And
he's an interesting guy to read some body language at times.
He and Tatum too. The two of them really could hang their heads. Now I think Jason has broken that. The last couple games, he's been pretty good, pretty dominant on offense, honestly.
Yeah.
And
you're right, though. He got into that little funk early in the season where he'd have a bad offensive possession.
And he'd let it control his whole game.
Exactly. And he would let it hurt him on the defensive end. He'd get beat on the other end, and it would just be a bad cycle.
Yep. Yeah, so I think Jason's pulling through that, which is good. But Jalen, I mean, if you think about it, I think I don't know if it was – what the heck game was it? It might have been Dallas, where he played a lot of minutes with the second unit, and he was – driving the basket hard. He was getting to the line.
He actually looked pretty good. Yeah, he looked pretty good in Dallas. I think he played like 30 minutes, and he was 7 for 9, 7 for 10, something.
But I want to say then, didn't Steven sit him down the stretch?
He got hurt early in the fourth quarter. That's when he fell in his lower back. He said he would be fine to go back in, but that's where he fell. But yeah, I agree. It's that issue, like you said, dribbling through traffic, and then when he does get to the rim, he hasn't been finishing at the rim.
No, he's been missing dunks,
which is rare because last year he was very good around the rim.
Yeah. So I mean, I honestly would like to see Brown go to the bench, not as a punishment, but also to try and kind of light a spark under him as well, because I don't think he's played nearly to the levels he did. No one's played to the levels they did in the playoffs last year.
Right.
Here's the thing, and I've been on. When the Celtics struggle, it's kind of good for business. Our views go through the roof, and I get called a lot to go on to radio shows and podcasts. But I was on one last week.
Yeah.
And, of course, the entire, subject is what's wrong with the Celtics?
Yep.
Should they blow it up? Listen, chemistry is key, right? But we know how much talent there's almost too much talent on this team.
Yeah, they're too talented to be this mediocre.
Right. We know that intensity, a lack of intensity, a lack of focus, lack of fire, that's all complacency. Mm-hmm. We know that they're really good from playing from behind because they have dug themselves out, maybe not won the game, but dug themselves out of huge deficits.
They're great in desperation.
All they really need is that one moment to click, and let's just hope that happened on Monday night. It sure felt like it, Chris, watching.
It did, yeah. I agree. It's funny talking to people who aren't necessarily engulfed in the Celtics performance like we are. We're around it on Twitter, we're around it at the practice facility.
We're kind of dorks, right?
Yeah, so I'm cool with that. I like being an NBA dork, but it's funny because you go on these radio interviews, whatever it is, and they ask you what's wrong with the Celtics, and I'm curious to see how that changes. I have one on SB Nation Radio tonight, and I wonder if it'll be different now that they maybe clicked last night.
Similar to the conversation we're having right now, what we saw Monday, are they going to be able to carry that moving forward?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And before we wrap, too, one thing, and this is for fans at home, before covering the team on a game-by-game basis, so every game, I used to sit at home and really get frustrated with Marcus Smart. He used to drive me crazy. I wasn't a Marcus Smart fan really until probably 2015, when I got in the arena every single game, when I started covering games again. Because the things you see him do off camera,
it's a lot of little things.
Oh man, and it's stuff that doesn't show up in the box score, but it's stuff that kind of lets you say, okay, let him take the three.
Yeah,
because
I get it.
Right. So it's one of those where I could say badmouth this one or that one, but I'm also the first guy to come back and say I eat crow. And Marcus Smart, I totally eat crow, and he's become one of my favorite players on and off the court. He's just such a great personality. And I know there are still a lot of fans that at home that, the minute he has a bad game, it's get rid of Marcus Smart. Well, remember me saying this because you notice it more in the arena than you do on TV. The guy is pretty invaluable, especially the dollar amount that Danny got him at.
Yeah, and for the Celtics and for what he brings to this specific team, worth every penny, in my opinion. There's no question. There's no question there. Yeah. Speaking of Danny, we even had some people calling for some trades like immediately in the last few weeks, and we had him come out and say that patience will win in the long run. He'll be patient. He's not going to panic trade here at all. So,
well, here's the thing, Chris. Danny Ainge, as well as I do, he is never going to trade when his stock is so low. And right now, the stock is very low.
Yeah. Also,
the draft picks are
21
worthless.
Games into the season. Like,
right.
It's a lot of overreactions out there. And
sure. But starting out 500, 21 games into the season, it could be kind of, panicky when everybody was calling, including me, was calling for a 60-win team.
Right.
But when you're looking at it from a standpoint of Ainge should blow up the team, okay.
Blow it up.
We have draft picks.
We're not the Wizards. We're not covering the Wizards here.
And we have draft picks that are decreasing in value, and they're going to go back up in value because Sacramento's not going to continue to play the way they are. Right. And they're going to end up going back up in value as those teams settle down. And then you have diminished value on your players on the court because they're not playing well.
Yeah.
So Danny Ainge, I wouldn't put it past him to trade at the trade. I mean, this team almost has one too many good players.
Yeah.
I can see him trading for a valued role player at the trade deadline, but only if he's going to get back what the player's worth and not basically let the player's poor play dictate the value.
Yeah, it really depends on that market. Right now, I don't see any I don't really see any trades happening during the season. I could see maybe something occurring around that Jabari Bird spot if once his court situation gets figured out. He's going back into court, I think, in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Again, it's all how it plays out. They've got an interesting schedule over the next few weeks that, again, isn't that tough. So it goes, I'll read it real quick. They go Cleveland at home on Friday. Then they go to Minnesota. They got the Knicks, the Bulls, the Pelicans again, and then the Wizards. So
and the Knicks are home, I think.
And the Knicks are home. It's again at the Garden.
I feel like that is a gut check.
It is. It is. Go give it to Trey Burke again, man. Because you know that Kyrie will want that. I don't know. We'll just have to kind of see how it plays out, especially when it comes to trades. But Nick, I will see you at the Garden later this week, Friday night. Cavaliers. Let's get a little winning streak going here so we can keep up some of these positive podcasts. I like these.
Yeah, I think it's on the horizon. Again, there's a difference between seeing the Celtics play well at quarter by quarter, which we've seen throughout the entire season, and what we saw on Monday night wasn't just buzzer, but they had the fire in their eyes again. They were scrambling and not allowing the Pelicans to set up their offense. I mean, it was just classic Brad Stevens Celtics basketball. So there's something in me, without wanting to jinx it, Chris, there's something in me that's telling me Cleveland's in for a beating on Friday night.
Let's hope so. I like that attitude. Let's hope so. Let's stay positive going into Friday. Nick, I will see you at the Garden.
Thanks, Chris. Later.